The education system has reached a breaking point. It is no longer able to deal with the speed, the pace of the internet era, the information era. I remember as a young kid that all of my written assignments I wanted to do as videos. I wanted to do video projects. I wasn't interested in long form writing. And I was very rarely allowed to do so. I remember that there was so many ways that as a young person who was engaging with young and new things, I was stifled or limited by the education system's ability to understand what was happening, because I was right. Imagine in elementary school where they said, yo, this kid wants to make videos. This is a child. How are they even able to make videos? Wait a second. Maybe he's onto something. And then you have an entire class of kids who are just making TikToks in 2007. We'd all just be printing money because we'd be freaking content geniuses. But we put so much more value on like written language in school and in institutions. And that's because the teachers, the people in charge, that's what they know. That's how they grew up. That's the, limit the capacity of their understanding of information. And here I am like 20 years later, and every single week I read about how more and more Gen Z young people are illiterate. They don't know how to read. And even if they do know how to read, like, our attention span is just so fried and so fast that stuff is becoming almost, meaningless. It's becoming way less important and way less meaningful than the impact or influence that an influencer, quote unquote, is able to have. Because influencer or whatever is basically the amalgamation of information. The way that we form identity is very socialized. So when you have something like an influencer, someone with millions of people that follow them, those are millions of people that they basically have access to influence their understanding of themselves. We use our community, we use the people around us to kind of calibrate our ability to value judge whether or not we are doing the right things and living a proper life. It's very difficult to do something when everyone around you isn't doing it. It's naturally you are ostracizing yourself, you're standing out, and therefore you are vulnerable. Like, the reason zebras have stripes is for camouflage. But if you think about it, that doesn't make any sense because they're black and white, so that camouflage isn't with the natural elements, it's with each other. Those black and white stripes traveling in a pack, it's very hard to identify a singular zebra. They all blend together. So they've evolved to a place where it isn't about, dealing with the environment. The way that they survive is by dealing with each other. And if a zebra didn't have, the stripes, if it was just a bright white horse-like animal, then it would stand out a lot more. And it would be easier to kill. So we as people, our natural evolution wants us to stay on the same stripes, have the same camouflage as everyone else. And the way that humans, dictate their actions and make decisions on what they should do with their time is very much based on what they see from the world around them. So now that we are in the internet era and things are no longer like super local, us young people, we're seeing people from all over the world. And schools and institutions and all these different power structures, they are coming from a much more limited frame of reference. And I think that's why, now, I was that kid that just wanted to do video projects. Here we are 20 years later, and all of these kids are, not paying attention in class and spending all their time on their phones. Imagine if we embraced that. We embraced the phone and we allowed kids to get very skilled at it. And doing a video essay is actually seen as more valuable than doing a written essay, because with a written essay we're just mimicking the past. We're just rewriting things that are already well established. And with this whole idea of video and the way that it's able to lower the bandwidth, make it more accessible and easy to communicate, the ability to see a much wider perspective is available in a whole new way. Like, for example, in chess, if you had a chess tournament before the internet, you would have people from all over the world, and they had different understandings of how to play chess. So someone from, Lithuania, someone from Russia might know about different openings, which means the first moves you play, which is very important in chess, that dictates the game. The different openings were different depending on where you were from in the world, because you learn it from the people around you. So even the best chess players in the world could come across openings that they had never seen, never heard of, never prepared for. Once you get the internet, we're now able to Google basically what are all of the openings. So a young child in chess knows more about chess than a grandmaster would, 50 years ago. And that's how you see like a Magnus Carlsen kind of emerge, where he was 9 years old beating the best people in the world. And it's imagine if they told Magnus Carlsen he wasn't allowed to play chess the way that he was. Imagine how much that stifles the progression of something. So I think that the universities and schools, public schools, all that, unless they adjust, they're gonna die. They're gonna get replaced by something else. You could argue they already are, because the point of them is to teach people stuff, and the point of learning is to maneuver through the world with a better understanding. It's supposed to be applicable and valuable and beneficial to your daily life. When it's not doing that, and it's just reinforcing the past, reinforcing, previous ways of understanding, then young people are going to seek out and find the things that are valuable and do help them live life and do help them maneuver through reality. And I think the future of education is multimedia content. It's video essays, it's websites, web portals, web games, simple games you can play on the internet. And I just don't see any logical reason why in the future, you need to learn basic math on a piece of paper, on a worksheet. You can learn basic math by planting fruit. You can learn basic math by playing basketball. And one of the things I love about that is that's actually a more true understanding of the thing. It goes beyond the language of it, because that's a concept that's flawed, and it gets to the reality of it. So looking at the numerals, the symbols of 1 + 1 = 2 is a way of understanding it. But if you basically have a basketball game where it's one person versus two people, then you start to have a better understanding of the difference between 1 and 2. If you were to basically plant a seed and then watch it grow over time, then you would have a much better understanding of that process and the food system and the environment than if you were to look at a bunch of words, a bunch of symbols, and try to apply those. It's like we use so many symbols and so much language to communicate things that it seems like we don't even value the actual things anymore. You know, it's almost like us humans have gotten so caught up in our ability to intellectualize that we think that equates to some sort of omniscient, godlike understanding or godlike perspective. When you're planting that seed into the ground, you're dealing with the environment, you're dealing with the earth, you're dealing with the fundamental realities of the world. Therefore, there isn't much room for error. And if there is error, there's absolutely potential to learn from that error. So if you plant a seed and then it doesn't grow, there's going to be an environmental reason for that does fit into the laws of science, that does fit into, these more intellectual systems. But you can get that base understanding without being so intellectual. If you plant a seed and it doesn't grow, you can find out that it's because of the quality of the soil. And once you kind of are dealing with things in that sort of base reality, that sort of base existence, then the value of error will become a lot more evident, as opposed to if you're doing like a worksheet and the equation is like really difficult and you don't really understand how to answer it. The flaw could just be in the wording of the question. The flaw could be in the teacher's ability to communicate an idea. So much of the flaw can come down to language and communication of the idea rather than the actual idea itself. Einstein's theory of relativity is that, things can only exist in relation to each other. I'm only standing to the left of this because of, like, let's say you want to be to in order to identify something, it's impossible to do it. That's why I'm struggling here. It's impossible to do it without identifying another point. So if you say something is east, that's only because of the fact that you are standing somewhere else, which you would consider west. So if you imagine it like a grid, we can identify different points on the grid, but the actual grid itself cannot exist without those individual points. And I feel like I'm getting lost in a word salad here. What I mean by the theory of relativity is that money is only valuable because we have a social construct, a social contract, agreement, a consensus of what it represents. So if you were to give money to, someone in a tribal society, it would not be valuable to them. It would mean nothing because it doesn't exist in relation to anything else. It only has the value that we give it. So, like, things in general only have meaning in relation to how we perceive that thing. The meaning of life is life. And the question itself is an example of how intellect can fail us. We can intellectualize ourselves into situations where things don't make sense. If you remove the intellect of it, then you remove the ability to question it. You remove the ability to be paralyzed by indecision, be paralyzed by inquisition, be so caught up in saying the right thing or doing the right thing, or the fucking mind of it, that I feel like I'm getting lost here. Well, okay, so wrap it up. The future of education. This is killing me because I'm trying to just post these videos straight off my phone, not edit them, and I hate those kind of lapses, but I hope that people can kind of understand what I'm getting at, which is that the values that we are placing on, the way we do school, the way we do money, the way we tell kids how to be, is so much so a response to the past. So much of it is in relation to the previous ideas and previous intellect that we grow up and we try to understand. But it's put us in a situation where the average person can be very disconnected from the present and the ways that the present informs and shapes the future. So when I was a little kid and I wanted to make video essays and they're saying, no, you have to do paperwork, they were valuing the past as really important. They didn't recognize the importance in the fact that you have like a young kid who's able to make videos. They didn't recognize that I, as a living, breathing human being on this earth, have just as much value and potential and ability to change the world as any of these names that they want to teach me about. Any sort of like, you need to learn about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and go to fashion school to learn about how Louis Vuitton made luggage. And, it's like, I am Louis Vuitton. I am, of the same flesh and blood as all of these like people that we learn about. And that's the problem with false idols, is it assigns so much value to certain people and defines so many people as valueless. And the value of something, like I said, only exists in relation to something else. So when things are happening in the present, when they're manifesting in the present, it's really quick to try to defend that point that we stand on, and we overlook the way that the points of the past are what made the future. Like the things they're teaching me about shaped the world, and then that world shaped me. So I am the result of the equation that they're trying to teach me. We are the answer to the question. The meaning of life. We are the answer to that question. So asking me that question is stupid. So I feel like that ties it together. It's a little abstract, but I think that the education of the future comes down to the ability to adapt, adjust, and allow for the ideas of today to shape tomorrow, rather than try to enforce the ideas of yesterday into today. We need to realize that the ideas of yesterday are already prevalent. They're already the foundation of everything we experience. So the things that we are experiencing right now have the ability to inform and shape the future. We need to apply care, love, value, and attention on today, the things in front of us right now, in order to manifest a future where there is more care, there is more value, and there is more love that we can all experience in the pursuit of education or acquisition of information, because information is the most important resource. You need water, food, shelter, information. Information is what allows you to understand how to get water, to understand where to hunt, to find food, to understand how to farm, to understand how to build. Information is the most important resource. And the way that the education system is dealing with information is no longer able to compete with things like this. I hope. Tell me if I'm right. Tell me if I'm wrong. I certainly feel like, as someone without any sort of college degree, I think that I would have a better understanding of things like business and the future and systems and structures than a lot of the people teaching those courses, because they're teaching courses on things that happened in the past that never happened to them, to young kids who are stepping into the future, and it will never truly be applicable to them in the way that the present is. We are in the here and now. So let's look at the past for all of the ways that it can benefit us, but be consciously aware of all of the ways that the past is able to hold us back. And our ability to overlook the value of what's happening right now and the opportunity of right now for the idea of history being so important. Like, I am the next Steve Jobs. I am the Ye of YouTube. I am the Nikola Tesla of the iPhone. And just saying that, like your likability just goes down to zero. Like, anyone hearing that is just like offended and, disgusted that you could dare think of yourself as so important. You could dare see the value in yourself as a human being. I do dare to do that. I do dare to understand the fundamental realities of time and space. There's a fundamental truth to the element of the way that we dictate our time today informs the spaces of tomorrow. The way that we inhabit time is the way that we are able to inhabit space. Man, I get so caught up because it's like part of me wants to just super duper edit like everything to make it as like algorithm as possible. But then when I think about like the value of the individual human being, it feels so constrictive. It feels so restrained. It feels so focused on playing into a larger system that's about advertising and data acquisition, that I think it's probably not the ideal way to communicate, because the ideal way to communicate, the actual of it, is two human beings talking to each other, or whatever amount of people. But you don't really necessarily teach someone like how to communicate. You like give them language, but stuff like tone and emotion and feeling and spirit dictate so much of how we communicate. And you can't really edit for those things. They exist in the in-between space. They exist in the openness. Like, something I used to kind of fall into, and I'm very aware of, is how easy it is to just like edit yourself into some sort of authority. Just like clip out any moments of imperfection, clip out any moments where you could be like incorrect, and try to come across as like, this is the key to the universe. Anyone who says otherwise is stupid and they're trying to control you and they're incorrect. It's like, I don't know if what I'm saying is right. I hope that people can find value in it. But I don't think like language can ever amount to some sort of universal truth, because the universe doesn't all speak one language. What we do all do is perceive, like that farming analogy. if you show someone how to plant a seed and watch it grow, it doesn't matter what language they speak. If you give someone a worksheet, then the only thing that matters is the language of it. Your ability to succeed or fail is solely based on your ability to deal with the language of the thing. And that's where we need to work together, because there are people who are good at stuff like that. There are people who are more intellectual. There are people who are more feelings-based. There's people who are more, into the emotions that something generates. There are people who facts don't care about your feelings. And then there's also the truth that feelings are what dictates the facts. Like putting intellect as the primary of perception. Putting intellect as the primary of perception is a misnomer. It's false. It's not correct, because you have to learn language. You don't have to learn how to see. You don't have to learn how to make sounds. You don't have to learn how to move. We already know these things. That's the primary. And everything we add on top of that is like the seasoning, the sauce, the flavoring. Ooh. Love, Godspeed, God bless the world. If anyone tries to tell you that your ideas are wrong or incorrect, I would always remember that the quote-unquote truth, the consensus of reality we hold now, has led to the situation we're in now, which is the vast majority of resources on Earth are limited to a select group of people. We can manifest a future where the acquisition of resources is no longer a primary concern for anybody on Earth. We can provide the systems for everybody to be accounted for. And once we do that, we can get rid of the past and live in the moment and focus on the future.